Springtime in Memphis. You walk outside and your car is coated in neon yellow or green magic sky dust. Temperatures, of course, are all over the place. Our sinuses are beating us up, allergies exploding. So what is going on? What is this magical moment that all the plants seem to be waiting on as if on cue? And why is it affecting us so much in the Mid-South? Got your answers. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Current Temp. I am Joey Solopek. I am so glad that you're here watching and listening, and we've got some great information this week. Now, before I get to that, let me first of all say that we are big fans of Lexus of Memphis and stellar group. I mean, top-tier men and women and product. They're our sponsor here on the Current Temp, and we are just indebted to them, and we love what they do and who they are. We're also accepting applications if you'd like to be a part of our team as well as a sponsor. If you've got a group or business that aligns with us and our brilliant audience, very smart thinkers out there, men and women who are making decisions and doing things, we'd love to hear from you. Email us, thecurrenttemp@gmail.com, and let's have a conversation. We'd love to talk to you. All right. Allergy sufferers. We've gone outside, gone to start up the car. It looks a lot like this, covered in piles of dust when the night before you just washed it, or it was clean as could be. What is going on out there? Well, these plants don't just decide to release pollen on their own. What they're doing is they're responding. They're responding to three primary environmental cues. And I'm going to tell you what those are, and you'll be a detective yourself, and you'll know when to look for this and when it's going to happen. First of all, the primary trigger, temperature. That sunshine out there beating down on those pretty flowers and that green grass. And here's what happens. Plants track what's called accumulated warmth. All right, accumulated warmth, or it's also known as growing degree days, okay? Once a critical threshold is reached, where those plants have reached a warmth threshold, their internal chemistry flips. And they go from being dormant and in that winter hibernation mode into reproductive springtime mode. So they're tracking those temperatures internally. Once they warm up enough, they flip that switch. And again, the trend is important because it's not just a one-day swing. It has to be a few warm days in a row, say 70s and 80s, and then that accelerates the process. So there has to be, the trend is your friend when it comes to pollen growth. Now, number two is called photoperiod. That's the fancy word, photoperiod, which means day length. How much sunshine during the day, which of course, as we know, extends once we get to daylight savings time or whatever happens when we spring forward, you get that extra hour of daylight, right? More day length. So photoperiod means the period of time each day that an organism receives illumination, or that daylight we talked about. And plants, and particularly trees, this is where it gets really important and going to fill your brain with knowledge. Trees are the key word here. They use that increasing daylight as sort of a seasonal internal clock. Lets them know it's time to go. And of course, having several days in a row prevents a false start with these wild temperature swings that we see here in the Mid-South. And we see those all the time. And that's a part of this deal too. We're going to talk about that. Number three, soil temperature, because the roots are important as well. So they've got to wake up. And so as warmer air filters into the soil and we get water, so warm air and water with those springtime storms, that lets the ground and the soil move and get more active, which in turn stimulates pollen production, okay? So we're really setting the stage. So what's happening in the Mid-South? Well, we're seeing warmer than average temps already. You may have read about this. I've seen it on the news that nationally we are seeing much warmer temps. In fact, I think we broke some local records here in the last couple of weeks. So what that means is these plants are starting their engines, especially the trees right now, and we're going to talk about that. So the warm trend means rapid growth, rapid acceleration of pollen production. Now, a cold snap, and we've seen those, doesn't stop the process. It can slow that plant metabolism down briefly, but it's not a reset, okay? So we could see temperatures go up and down this week, next week. Pretty common here in the Mid-South, March into April, these big swings, but plants bounce right back. They just resume where they left off. So if it's warming, and it's cold, they push pause for a minute. Then when it warms right back up, they're right back at it. So we know that we've had temperatures bouncing all over the place. That's actually part of the reason we have so much pollen, is that the temperatures are bouncing around. If it was more gradual, we wouldn't see like this pollen dump that we see in the Mid-South. We're going to get to that. I keep teasing things that are coming up, but they are. The wind. The wind is a primary component here. It's a critical factor because it's known as the dispersion vehicle. If you've ever held a dandelion and blew those spores out, those little parachutes, and they go flying off, well, every place one of those lands, if it lands and germinates, it can become another dandelion. And of course, the wind is a very efficient delivery system, better than insect-based pollination. This is wind pollination, which can disperse these little seeds far and wide, where insect-based, if you're thinking about butterflies, bumblebees, they go flower to flower, they're not going to have as much power and distance as the wind does. So the wind physically shakes that pollen loose and can make it travel for miles and miles. So when you get up in the morning and you go look at your car and you're like, what in the world happened? Did somebody, rob a bank and put food dye in a bag of flour and explode it over my car? No, you know what the culprit is? Primarily trees. So that was a good thing to learn. So now I can kind of be on the lookout for that. Trees are the king of the jungle when it comes to pollen dispersal in the beginning of spring. If you live near woods, if you live near some nice big-sized trees, then you are going to bear the brunt of it, especially oak, pine, got a lot of that, and then the other three, maple, elm, birch. Oak and pine are the big ones, maple, elm, and birch. So why is it that they are so prolific? It's because trees create that pollen in massive quantities. Think about the leaves or the bough of a tree, right? You go up the trunk of the tree, you hit the leaves, towering. It's producing pollen in mass, which is why you see my kind of analogy here on screen of the firefighting plane releasing, the fire retardant that goes on the flames. It's kind of what trees do with pollen. Millions of grains per tree. That's why I'm calling trees the Costco for pollen. Keep in mind, these pollen grains, God designed those super efficiently. Lightweight, dry, designed to travel through the air on the slightest breeze, which makes Memphis and the Mid-South the perfect epicenter for allergy problems. So why is it that Memphis is in the middle of the perfect storm when it comes to allergies? Let me break this down for you because we got a couple of factors here. Number one, we have a very long growing season. So for things to pollinate, they have to grow. Well, we've got a big window for that because of where we're located. Just north enough of the Gulf of Mexico to get heat and humidity. We get all that moisture. I mean, we're in the perfect spot for things to grow really from early spring to late fall, which means, of course, extended pollen exposure. Here's the other one. Lots of trees. I mean, lots. It's called high tree density. If you've ever flown in and out of the city of Memphis, or even sometimes we got people now putting up drones, it's green everywhere. So think about each one of those little Costco pollen producers. We're surrounded by it, oak, hickory, etc. We've got a very heavy, it's known as a heavy hardwood population. Lots of trees in the Mid-South. Here's another one. It's humid, dagnabbit. Not one of my favorite things. One of the things I don't like the most about Mid-South is how humid it is, and that is allergen central. Think about the opposite. People that said in the olden days, for my health, I'm going out to Arizona. I'm going out west. It's because it's dry. Well, the moisture in the air makes pollen linger and stick to surfaces like your sinuses. If it was dry, it might disperse it more efficiently. When it's humid, it's hanging around and we inhale it. And another big problem here is the weather ups and downs, the variability. When you see these giant swings in the weather, it means constant cannon bursts of pollen, boom, 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 over and over, as it just gets unloaded and unloaded instead of a gradual progression. All right, so 4 reasons why the Mid-South is generally considered one of the worst places to deal with allergies. And I'm talking the Mid-South. It's a big piece of real estate down here. So what happens to our bodies when pollen is dumped on us or we walk into a pollen cloud? Well, first of all, if you're an allergy sufferer, you know everything I'm about to say, but here's the science behind it. Our immune system treats pollen as an invader. And that's when we begin to release histamines, okay? Histamines, when triggered, increase blood flow and inflammation. And those things are designed to help our body fight off invaders. So if you think about a runny nose, histamine, watery eyes, histamine, and what's that doing? That's your body literally trying to flush out the things that are in there making you feel bad. And so what do you take if you want your nose to stop running? An antihistamine, right? It's supposed to block that instead of helping you. So it's kind of a bitter sword there, two edges to that sword. The runny nose is actually good because it's trying to flush your system out, and the watery eyes, but it makes you feel terrible. So you take things to try to stop that, all right? So what I would want to know is, if I was watching this at home, when are things the worst and when are the best? Well, let's start with the worst days. Your worst days for allergies is once the season starts, and we're going to tell you when that is here in just a second, and when it's dry and windy. Warm, dry, and windy, because you got pollen everywhere. It's flying all over the place. It's called peak spread, peak pollen spread, warm, dry, and windy. So what is one of the better days? Well, I bet you know this. It's when it rains, because when it rains, that pollen gets knocked out of the air. Every little falling raindrop grabs a piece of pollen, takes it into the ground, and it gets washed away. And every mid-southerner has seen after a warm spring rain, you can look down at the street or the gutters, and it looks like somebody spilled a can of bright yellow paint or green paint as all that pollen is going down the drain. So some things for us to remember as we're dealing with this. I think these are some pretty helpful tips. Number one, morning is the worst for pollen. Pollen is at its worst in the morning hours. You've got usually more moisture in the air in the mornings before the sun gets up and the heat dome starts to build a little bit, so you're going to see it more concentrated. Here's something else to remember. Change out those filters in your HVAC system. Normally, that's the one that's in the attic or the closet or whatever, not outside, the one that's inside. It's got filters with it. You need to change those every 2 to 3 months. A good rule of thumb is if you put a flashlight up to it and you can't really see the light coming through, get a new one. They're not super expensive. You can get them online. You can get them at Walmart, Amazon, whatever. By the way, Amazon, Walmart, love to have you as a sponsor here. But if you're a super sensitive allergy sufferer, go get a specialized HVAC filter. They sell those everywhere, specifically designed to help clean out the air in your home. All right, that's a pretty big deal. Here's another one that people don't think about. I used to talk about this on air all the time. When you go outside to work in allergy season, you're getting covered up in allergens. Well, when you walk back in, you're wearing it. You're wearing the pollen on your clothes and your hair. So change clothes, right? Get it right into the washing machine or a hamper. And you got to take a shower. If you are a sufferer, if it's extremely bad for you, you got to get the stuff out of your hair. And that being said, it's also on your pets. So good idea is to keep an old towel by the door. If they're outside rolling around and whatever, and they're coming in, knock off the dirt and pollen and dust on the rag or towel, let it sit outside, and you can let them in. And take care of your, rinse it off of your car, because once you get in your car, if you touch the hood or whatever, it can get on you, or patio furniture. Rinse it off or cover it if you can. We try to cover it during the worst peak months here at our house, cover up some of the outside chairs or whatever. We'll throw on an old sheet or an old tarp. And then once we get past the worst of it, maybe I'll get out the leaf blower and try to dust off all the outdoor furniture just to make it more, so it's not staining you or hurting your system. All right, so how long does this stuff last? Unfortunately, overall, about half a year, about 6 months. Now, that's from start to end. The worst of it, the more intense period, is going to happen between March and April, which is where we are now. And that's because that's when those trees are waking up and tree pollen is at its worst. In fact, you can find a video online if you want to search this video online of tree and pollen and shake. You can just put those 4 words, tree, or 3 words, tree, pollen, shake. And you're going to see videos of people that have taken down trees or, yard work, tree companies. And as they fall so quickly that it looks like an outline of the tree is nothing but pollen, which then just goes poof. It's incredible. It really, every time I see those videos, I think, man, I'm glad I wasn't standing there and that landed on me, because that would have been tough. So tree pollen is the worst in March and April. Then we get to grass pollen, which grass has its own pollen. These living things do. That's going to be May to June. And so just keep that in mind. And then it's going to linger until we get the first hard freeze, which is usually late October or November. So starting in about March to April, and that's the worst. That's for the hardcore, It's everywhere, and then it lingers and gets a little bit better as we go through time. All right, let's recap. All right, let's talk about a couple of things to help you remember. Allergies are not a random event. They're synchronized. They kick in, those pollen spores, pollen starts exploding around March to April, and they're really driven by three primary things. You're talking about temperature, daylight, and weather patterns. Of course, all the things that we know are a big deal here in the Mid-South. And medicine can help. I personally take over-the-counter nose spray, some type of Zyrtec. You can get a generic brand. But I'm not a doctor. Check with a physician. Make sure you know what you're taking. But those things can help ease your pain, ease your suffering, and take some of those precautions we talked about changing your clothes, getting in the shower, making sure get an air filter. We have several in the house now. You can get those pretty cheap that are just running. Plug them in so that it's filtering the air around you. That'll help make things better. I hope this was helpful. Seemed like a timely thing to talk about, all these allergy issues. I know we've got a lot of people out there who deal with that. And we'd love to hear from you about what you liked about the show. If you have an idea for a future show, if you have a person who is interesting, you think deserves some attention to be talked to, we'd love to talk to them. You can email us, thecurrenttemp@gmail.com. One of the team members will get back with you. And we hope that you have a allergy low spring into summer and that your house has air conditioning. Ours just went out. We just got it fixed. Thank you, good Lord, for air conditioning. And we hope you have a great week.